I'll tell you how I relax, in case people are interested. Nothing beats a good Polish vodka, my favorite.
I like it.
By the way, I'm not drunk, don't worry.
And it literally has no value whatsoever, but it's just getting pumped. Those are red flags to me as a trader and an investor, right? To me, it doesn't seem like a true bottom, so it has me on edge. And I still think whether we go higher or not, my guess is there's still more pain to fully flush out crypto. One of the things I like to say is even though I think we could go a little bit higher in the stock market, we discussed that as well, I still think we are headed much, much lower over the next year or two. Technically speaking, to me, that's a huge wall right there. That would be the catalyst, is that if the stock market really does take a dump later this year or next year, that selling pressure will take Bitcoin with it.
All right, guys, hello and welcome. We have a very special guest for us in this particular video. As you can see, our good friend and trader, Gareth Soloway. Gareth is going to join us in this video. We're going to talk about Bitcoin. We're going to talk about, well, he's going to tell us his long-term expectations for Bitcoin. I'm interested to hear his opinion myself. Gareth, how are you doing, by the way? You well?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much.
So Gareth, before we start, one question which I do want to ask you is, I think people would be interested to know the answer. How do you relax? I know you trade the markets, and obviously it can be very frustrating, can be very stressful, can be enjoyable as well. Don't get me wrong here. What I'm saying is, how do you relax? What are some of the things you do to get your mind off things? I'll tell you how I relax, in case people are interested. Nothing beats a good Polish vodka, my favorite.
I like it.
By the way, not a sponsor, although they should be. Belvedere is actually my favorite vodka. Belvedere, it tastes amazing. By the way, for any Polish people who are watching this, jak się masz? Jestem zalany w trupa. Okay.
Nice.
Okay. So yeah, it actually meant I'm drunk, which I'm not drunk. Don't worry.
It is Cinco de Mayo, you know.
Yeah, Cinco de Mayo. Yeah. Gareth, let's hear your views. Oh, you didn't even answer the question. Yeah, how do you relax? Sorry.
Yeah. And sorry, over here I'm a spider short right now. I was putting out it's getting close to my target, so I was putting out an order. That's why I was kind of on this area over here.
Are you closing the shorts? Are you closing the shorts, or what are you doing?
Closing, yeah. I was just doing a day trade short there. So, but anyways, to relax, and you're right. I mean, balance is really important as a trader, because number one, I sit in this chair for God knows how many hours a day, right? Which is not a healthy lifestyle in general. So so for me, it's, trying to get to the gym. For me, I used to lift weights back in the day, and that used to be my passion. Now it's, now that I have a family, it's a little harder to do. So I'm more into the group exercises type gyms where, you're with a bunch of people, but that's fun. Hanging out with the kids, doing the beach here in Florida is always fun. And, but you're right. You do have to get away from the screens and kind of take it down a notch.
Yeah, absolutely. I took a trip to Iran in March. Definitely worth it. Guys, if you're watching this, whether you're trading stocks, Bitcoin, whatever, just for a few weeks, take your mind off it, go somewhere, don't pay any attention to the charts, the markets, anything. It's the best thing. It clears your mind. And I don't know if you agree with me on this, after you come back, Gareth, do you find that actually you feel a bit more objective? Like you feel you can approach things more objectively, more impartially?
100%. Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you're able to get a little time away, it kind of recharges the battery, clears the mind. It grounds you. There's something called grounding in science-ish type stuff. It's a little bit, people look at it a little weird, but it's essentially walking barefoot on the earth allows that energy to kind of flow into the earth. If you look at what I'm surrounded by, and you can only see part of it, I'm surrounded by a million screens here, computers. The amount of energy being pushed on me is not healthy overall. So it's important to get out in nature and kind of relax a little.
Absolutely, yeah. Last time we spoke, you sounded quite bearish on Bitcoin. That was back in January. I think you were expecting Bitcoin. Well, I don't know. You probably can tell me best. Has your view changed in the last 3 months, or is it relatively still the same longer term in the next by the end of this year? So I'm looking to understand your view more towards longer term by the end of this year, by the end of 2023, what you think and all that.
So as of now, and we talked about in the last video, the 30,500 level where we stopped is psychologically a huge level. So for me, I'm still in the camp where this is still a bear market. If you look at the move down from 69,000 to 15.7, then the bounce to 30,000. it's still relatively within past cycles bounces, right? We've seen in 2018, 2019, heck, we had bounces from 3,500 back to close to 10,000. So percentage wise, that's even bigger than what we've seen here. I'm also, and we just talked about it previously too, is I'm also very concerned about the psychology of investors in crypto being far too bullish at this point. If this is a bull market cycle, if you look at past bull markets, investors were still very bearish. Like I still vividly remember when Bitcoin was at 10,000 in 2000 and late 18, 19, people were still very scared. And Bitcoin at that point was up 200% basically off of its lows. Here we have, in my opinion, the bullishness is near the bullishness that we saw when we were at the tops at 69,000. So, again, when you see Pepe running, I think it's up like 1,500% now in a week, and it literally has no value whatsoever, but it's just getting pumped. Those are red flags to me as a trader and an investor, right? If this was the stock market and I saw AMC doing that again or GameStop, I would be equally as concerned. And so for me, to me, it doesn't seem like a true bottom, so it has me on edge. And I still think whether we go higher or not, my guess is there's still more pain to fully flush out crypto. And that could come from regulation. It could come from stock market collapsing. One of the things I like to say is even though I think we could go a little bit higher in the stock market, we discussed that as well, I still think we are headed much, much lower over the next year or two in the stock market. And if that does happen, it's hard for me to believe that crypto will withstand, 20, 30% down on the S&P 500.
Your point about the markets being correlated is a very good one. I agree with you. I think Bitcoin and stock market have a very strong correlation, so they're likely to move together. Let's dig into your charts. What are your charts telling you?
So this is how I have my chart. Oh, I don't know if you guys can see it yet.
Yes, we can see.
Okay. So this is how I have my chart set up. And basically, you can see we had this is where the banking crisis kind of started, right in this area. We had the big push up. We then had sideways move. We just talked about how that 27,000 level is the current support here. Up here, this is your 30,500 level. And again, just to show everyone where I'm getting that from is if you stretch that line all the way back, you have this little pivot right here, which was hit multiple times after this initial move in Bitcoin. It came down, it hit again, then ran to 65,000. Then it came down again and hit 1, 2, 3, 4 times, then ran to 69,000 before breaking back and consolidating right at that same level. So technically speaking, to me, that's a huge wall right there. And we've already seen it tested and now it's, it's pulling back a little bit, but we're hanging relatively close. So you got to give it credit. It's not collapsing right off that level, which means there is a chance it can break through. So if we just go into the short term, and we talked about this, if you break 30,500, I have this trend line from this pivot right here to here. That would probably be your first area of resistance. So if we get through 30,500, you're looking at 33, 34,000 right up here. On the downside, if we take out the 27,000, you have this pivot here at 24 and this at 25. So those would be your two levels. And then lastly, we just talked about how here's my trend line going into this pivot right through here and right down to here. This would be my concern, right? If we ever get below this line and we break this trend line, that's where I would say, okay, now we're likely at least going to test the lows at 15.7. I still think there's possibility that we could see 12 to 13,000 and 9,000. It seems kind of ludicrous at this point, but again, from some of the stuff I'm looking at on the stock market, that would be the catalyst, is that if the stock market really does take a dump later this year or next year, that selling pressure will take Bitcoin with it.
So Gareth, is your view that this rally you're seeing in Bitcoin is more of a corrective bear market rally as opposed to the start of a bull market rally? Because that's Robert Prechter's view as well. Robert Prechter, the Elliott Wave analyst, he thinks that this rally is an ABC corrective rally. Again, it doesn't matter if you want to call it ABC or not, but is that your view or is it something else?
Yeah, no, that is my view, exactly. So my view is that, again, especially, and again, just looking at common sense things like, if we look at this big M top and then how much we've rallied back, I mean, again, bear markets have bull rallies within them, right? Just like bull markets have bear pullbacks within them. And so this to me is still showing me that we're within that. Now, it's kind of interesting because you could talk to what we would call fundamentalists in crypto, where they're saying, well, it's the 4-year cycle playing out again, and honestly, it looks like that, right? This is where the 4-year cycle normally would start to bring Bitcoin up. You got the halving next year, all of these factors. I'm just skeptical about that. Number one, everyone's talking about that. That makes me wary that it actually will play out. And number two is that this is the first crypto, bear market where the Fed is not printing money. And so I think considering we don't have a lot of data points, and I know you're a big data person, you only go back to 2009 in our data on Bitcoin. So yes, it's had 4-year cycles, but you've only had 3 of those, right? I mean, it's not a huge data sample size. And so now we have the Fed that's actually tightening. We have inflation higher, so they're somewhat handcuffed in terms of printing money again. To me, that could throw a wrench in the 4-year cycle that we've been accustomed to seeing.
That's interesting. So you don't see all-time highs anytime in the next year or two. Quite maybe the opposite. I think from what I've heard from you is instead of all-time highs, you actually think we could make new lows. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I think in my macro view, I'm still totally open to that. I'm much more of a trend line trader, which means that as of now, so we talked about this lower trend line, so it's more level by level. So we break this 27 level, then we're headed to 24 to 25. We break that, then we're testing this level. If that breaks, then we get into the danger zone where I think you are going back there. But I think in terms of probabilities, I'm right with Prector in that, to me, this is a bear market rally as of now until proven otherwise.
Interesting. That's interesting. So I think this is where probably, I respect your point of view, Gareth. I think you're an excellent trader and analyst. Certainly, we have a lot in common in terms of our views and perspectives. I definitely respect you on that. I think this is where perhaps the meeting of the minds is not there, where perhaps I see this rally as a bull market, as the beginning of a bull market. I could be wrong, of course, but I think the fact that Ethereum and Bitcoin recently took out some major resistance, which was the August 2022 highs, and some other factors involved as well. The fact that they held 20K. To me, personally, I see this as the start of a bull market, the beginning of a bull market. But I do understand why you see this the other way as well. I can understand why.
And honestly, I hope everyone listening and watching, this is the beauty of being a technician, and this is what everyone should want. I love that your viewpoints are different, that we differ someplace, because if we always agreed, it would be super boring, right? And this is what makes markets, so I think it's great, and likewise, I could be totally wrong, right? And that's the beauty of it, is that these are two different points of view, and then people get to watch and determine for themselves what they think will be the outcome.
Yeah, and just to add to my point, my stop loss or my invalidation point, you want to call it that, is the March lows. If the March lows were to be taken out, I would change my view, and that would mean I'm wrong. So if Bitcoin were to fall below the March lows, I would definitely change my mind, and I would become very bearish. But as long as we're above the March lows of 20K, I'm bullish. Is your view that by the end of this year, 2023, Bitcoin will plunge again to make new lows, or are you saying it could take much longer? I know it's extremely uncertain, and obviously nobody can know this. Nobody has a crystal ball. I know this, so I know it's a bit of an unfair question to ask you. But generally, is your view that in the next 12 months, perhaps by the end of this year or the start of next year, are we likely to make new lows? And if so, what are your downside targets if that's your view?
Yeah, so for me, it's I'm not sure if by year end we only have about a little over 6 months left, but I think if you said 12 months, then I do expect new lows to occur within that period. If we don't hit new lows within 12 months, then I think honestly we're in a bull market and we're off to the races. I think every bull and bear market has somewhat of a time factor attached to it, and so you're kind of in this period where if we're going to see the downside, maybe we go a little higher first, but we need to see it sooner than later. Eventually we see the bull market really, investors will finally say, okay, let's drive this thing higher. And I also think that, you're in a period where you have this waiting on regulation. I do believe that, and it's not technical, but if we get regulation and clarity at some point, that also can be a positive for Bitcoin, as it will allow big money to come in. So, and by the way, you might say, well, why the heck haven't we got regulation yet? It's been forever. And even in fact, Coinbase is suing the SEC, asking for clarifications on the regulatory stuff. And the answer is very simple, is that the government wants to release their CBDC first and then give the clarifications, because they want that foothold. And China, interestingly enough, China did this exact same thing. They basically outlawed Bitcoin, and then they launched their digital yuan, and then they brought back Bitcoin, and recently they've said, hey, it's okay now, because the digital yuan got a foothold in the system, and basically it's now being used as a reserve currency with transactions between countries. So I think the US doesn't want to ban Bitcoin. It's not going to do it to that extent, but they're basically holding back regulation so that big money doesn't get into these big things until there's a CBDC out there.
Very interesting. And did you mention your downside targets if it does drop? I don't.
I didn't mention them right now, but the levels are, so you have the 15,700, 15,000 level. That's going to be double bottom. Probably a swing trade bounce off of that level, I would assume. After that, you have 12 to 13,000 as a major target. And then my guess is if you're looking at max pain for Bitcoin, it would be a 10,000 break. So, if you think about where most people will throw in the towel, where they will freak out, 10,000 breaks. So in the 9,000, that would be kind of your max pain. And sometimes in bear markets, and we saw this in 09. I mean, think about 09 in March, where the bank stocks literally were pennies on the dollar. People were just freaking out. I knew people back then that literally would not open up their trading accounts because it was so nasty. They didn't even want to look at that point. So we haven't, to me, I don't think we've hit that on crypto yet. It doesn't seem like it. But again, maybe it's a new breed here in crypto, and this is the way it is.
Gareth, that's been a really interesting perspective. Tell us a bit more about how people can learn more about yourself and how people can get access to your trading material and service in the money stock. But make sure, guys, you check out the link in the description, which I'll put for you, inthemoneystocks.com, and go ahead and check it out and learn more about Gareth's services. Gareth, just tell a bit about your services and what you provide.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. It's honestly an honor to chat with you. So for me, it's inthemoneystocks.com is where I have a service called Verified Investing Alerts. In that service, I put out trade signals. So anytime I see a trade signal on a commodity or a stock, I'm alerting members to go long or go short, where to take profits, all that stuff. And I do a daily video, which gives in-depth analysis on the macro view, the stock, the view, the commodities, and so forth. And then just to mention, otherwise, as we talked about Bitcoin, I have a website called verifiedinvestingcrypto.com, which is basically a mirror the same format with trade signals on crypto, buys and sells and shorts, and also a daily video. So again, depending on what people want, it's there for them, and I do appreciate it. It's always good to follow me on Twitter as well, as I put a lot of free content out there.
Thanks very much, Gareth.